A Brazilian democracy group has filed a complaint against President Jair Bolsonaro before the International Criminal Court for genocide and crimes against humanity over his mishandling of the coronavirus pandemic. The UN General Assembly has adopted a resolution calling for global cooperation to ensure equitable and fair access to medicines, vaccines and medical equipment for all nations in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. Iraqi authorities have partially scaled back a curfew imposed to contain the coronavirus in a move to balance the restrictions with the traditions of the month of Ramadan. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, I'm Katrina Goss. Engineers for Brazilian Democracy Group has filed a complaint against President Jair Bolsonaro before the International Criminal Court for genocide and crimes against humanity over his mishandling of the coronavirus pandemic. This is the second criminal complaint filed against Bolsonaro before The Hague. The group stressed that the Brazilian president had violated the confinement recommendations of the Ministry of Health and the World Health Organization. The complaint was filed after Bolsonaro met with his supporters in a public rally, greeting attendees despite allegations that he could be infected with COVID-19. The lawsuit also refers to Bolsonaro's numerous acts to encourage gatherings of people without using protective equipment and calling for normality despite the rising number of cases and fatalities in the country. And as Brazil reports over 40,800 confirmed COVID-19 cases and almost 2,600 deaths, the country's new health minister said on Monday that the government will increase coronavirus testing capacity and there will be a progressive and structured exit from social isolation measures.
Our plan to buy tests is now 46 million tests. That's very important for our process that is under development, to use the test to better understand the disease. Its evolution and make a plan, a project. That is already being done. They review the social distances. We are acting in three basic ways. One is to better understand the disease, make the diagnosis, understand the evolution. Second is to prepare the infrastructure for the treatment, so in that time we are social distancing. We will improve and will be prepared for taking care. And third, without preparation, we will plan a program to live in a progressive, structural and planned way the social distancing.
Inmates of La Picota prison in the Colombian capital Bogotá are calling for the government to adopt measures to protect their health in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. They also denounced the irresponsibility of the National Penitentiary and Prison Institute towards inmates and have rejected a decree that seeks to release inmates from prisons to be put under house arrest.
Mr. President, Minister of Justice, Director General of IMPEC. Today, April 20, 2020, at 9:20 p.m., the inmates of La Picota prison inform you and the Control Center, national and international human rights organizations that we are respectfully beginning an indefinite act of peaceful disobedience as we will not stay locked in our cells. Mr. President, we call on you not to proceed with Decree 546 as it is unconstitutional and in fact an inefficient decree. It does not solve the prison problem. On the contrary, it aggravates it. Second, we demand a reduction of all sentences without discrimination. Third, we demand release of humanitarian grounds in accordance with international norms. We urgently request the presence of the Minister of Justice, the Attorney General's office, the Ombudsman's office, Criminal Policy, the Director General of IMPEC, national and international human rights organizations, and media to solve the serious prison problem that overwhelms us today. Mr. President, comply with the oath you took on August 7th to respect and comply with the political constitution of Colombia.
And Colombia is close to reaching 4,000 COVID-19 cases, while almost 190 people have lost their lives so far. On Monday, President Ivan Duque extended the lockdown regulations until May 11th. The National Institute of Health revealed that as of Sunday, 4.25% of the novel coronavirus cases in Colombia are health workers, most of them infected while working on the front line against the pandemic. Meanwhile, doctors continue to conduct searches for suspected COVID-19 cases in Colombian neighbourhoods. The Ministry of Health and Social Protection stressed on Monday that over 73% of cases are people aged between 20 and 59, although more than 50% of fatalities are patients aged between 60 and 79. The Mexican Senate has approved an amnesty law paving the way for the release of first-time non-violent offenders to lower the risk of coronavirus outbreaks in the country's prisons. The Senate estimated the bill could benefit about 2,600 inmates in the federal system. Beneficiaries of the bill would include those convicted of less serious offences like non-violent robbery or small-scale drug possession if the culprit was poor, forced into the act or disabled. Indigenous offenders would also be freed if they weren't guaranteed a fully fair process. The bill, approved on a 68-14 vote, also provides amnesty for those convicted of abortion, but specifically rules out release for those convicted of serious crimes like homicide, rape or kidnapping. The bill now goes to the President to be signed into law. Jamaica will keep its borders closed until May 31st, as the country has reported 27 new COVID-19 cases in the past 24 hours, taking a total to 223.
The government has also taken some other measures, which the Minister of Local Government had announced earlier. Golden age homes, infirmaries, there are certain orders that relate to them. Those orders still remain in place, particularly about visiting and how workers should operate and the hygiene measures that are necessary. So we want to make sure strategy number one is to protect our elderly. So far, knock on wood, we have done fairly well in protecting the elderly population.
This Tuesday marks the 50th anniversary of the state of emergency implemented in response to Trinidad and Tobago's Black Power Revolution of 1970. Mass mobilisations rocked the country for 55 days, beginning on February 26, 1970, as East Indians and Afro-Trinidadians united in protest. Led by the National Joint Action Committee, the movement called for equal employment opportunities, more representation, and the end of the monopolisation of the business community by white residents. A state of emergency was called on the 56th day of the protests, with 50 people arrested and 1 person killed in the demonstration.
Mr. Cambon, who was 23 years old at the time.
Right? I not that I was looking for one, make no mistake about it, but I would not have been able to get a job in a bank, right? Because of my color. You would not have been able to get a job in a bank.
And today, Telesur English presents a brand new programme to analyse current affairs in the Caribbean. Hosted by Darice Polo, the We Caribbean show will see intellectuals, activists, government officials and artists discuss the political, economic and social issues affecting the region. The programme will be broadcast at 5 p.m. in Caracas and Trinidad and Tobago, 4 p.m. in Quito and Jamaica. In the first edition, officials from Barbados, St. Lucia and Jamaica will discuss the implications of COVID-19 on the region. More stories coming up after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The UN General Assembly has adopted a resolution by consensus calling for global cooperation to ensure equitable and fair access to medicines, vaccines and medical equipment for all nations in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. The resolution, which was drafted by Mexico, calls for strengthening the scientific international cooperation necessary to combat COVID-19 and to bolster coordination, including with the private sector. The call for cooperation comes as research labs and pharmaceutical manufacturers launch expensive efforts to develop vaccines and other treatments that could be critical in combating the pandemic. The resolution also highlights the crucial leading role played by the World Health Organization, which has faced criticism from the United States and others about its handling of the pandemic. It also calls to prevent any stockpiling of essential medical supplies and to make any treatments or vaccines available to all those in need, in particular in developing countries. US oil prices suffered a historic crash on Monday, falling into negative figures for the first time ever due to falling demand in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. West Texas Intermediate, the benchmark for US oil, fell as low as minus $37.63 a barrel, meaning that oil producers are paying buyers to take the commodity off their hands over fears that storage capacity could run out in May. Major oil producers have announced cutbacks in production in hopes of stabilising the market, but analysts say this is not enough to offset the dual demand-supply shock sparked by the pandemic. US President Donald Trump said Monday he will sign an executive order to temporarily suspend immigration into the United States due to the coronavirus pandemic. Trump offered no details as to what immigration programs might be affected by the order, while the White House did not immediately elaborate on Trump's tweeted announcement. The US president has taken credit for the restrictions on travel from China and hard-hit European countries, arguing that these contributed to slowing the spread of the virus in the US. Almost all visa processing by the State Department, including immigrant visas, has been suspended for weeks. The United States has now reported more than 804,000 confirmed COVID-19 cases and over 43,000 fatalities. And meanwhile, members of National Nurses United, the largest organisation of registered nurses in the United States, have mobilised to protest a lack of personal protective equipment outside the White House, holding signs showing pictures of their colleagues who have been killed by COVID-19.
We are raising our voices across the country, and we demand to be heard. President Trump, Congress, and all other government officials, we demand that you immediately get PPE to nurses, doctors, and healthcare workers on the front lines of this pandemic. If you don't protect us, we can't protect our patients.
Italy has reported its first drop in the number of people currently suffering from the novel coronavirus since it recorded its first case in February. The number of COVID-19 patients receiving intensive care treatment also fell to the lowest level in a month, as Europe's hardest hit country began to see the first direct health benefits of its economically devastating lockdown. The Civil Protection Department reported that 108,237 people were either being treated in hospital or were recovering at home after testing positive, 20 fewer than the total reported on Sunday. However, the country's death toll still rose by 454 to over 24,000, second only to the United States. Spanish health authorities announced a slight increase in the daily COVID-19 death toll this Tuesday. Meanwhile, the March 14th lockdown has been extended twice so far, with the government saying it could move for a fresh extension until May 9th, although conditions are to be slightly eased on April 27th to allow children to spend some time outside.
Today we have an increase of 3,968 new cases. It is Tuesday, and we know that the information of the weekend usually is corrected on Tuesday, and this rise means that 2% more regarding what we observed the day before. In any case, these 3,968 new cases are around 1,000 cases less on Tuesday last week, which means the tendency continues to be in decline. We have 1,928 new healed people, which means 2.4% more of new healed, in a total of 82,514 new healed until this date. Although these last days the number of deceased has been better, the truth is that it continues to be a number we are worried about. We have 430 new deceased.
Most Londoners appear to be observing social distancing rules on Tuesday, although some commuters on public transport seem to have no choice but to stand close to each other while boarding trains. Last Thursday, the United Kingdom's lockdown, which includes the closure of all non-essential businesses and schools, was extended for another 3 weeks in an attempt to curb the spread of the novel coronavirus. However, while shoppers were able to observe social distancing measures, some London Underground trains were crowded with passengers as transport in the capital continues with a reduced service. People have been advised to stay at home and only travel to work if they are key workers, such as medical staff, or cannot work from home. But those who have to travel to work now have no choice but to travel on crowded services. The UK has reported over 129,000 COVID-19 cases and more than 17,000 deaths. China's northernmost province on the border with Russia has sparked concern due to the number of coronavirus cases reported. Meanwhile, no new cases have been reported in Wuhan, the epicenter of the outbreak. Our correspondent in Beijing, Ramsey Perasa, brings us more details on the latest measures being adopted to curb the spread of the virus.
Hello, greetings to you in the studio and to all our Telesur viewers. China registered today 11 new cases of the novel coronavirus, 7 of them of local transmission and 4 imported. In its daily press conference, the National Health Commission assured that of these 7 cases of local transmission, the majority, 6, were registered in the province of Heilongjiang and the other case in the province of Guangdong. We must say that at this moment the situation in the province of Heilongjiang has generated the greatest concern here in China, because in recent days there has been a considerable increase in cases, both of local and imported transmission. This province is on the border with Russia, and the situation also led the authorities to adopt special measures, and a special hospital is being built to care for COVID-19 patients, and doctors from all over the country are also being sent to this province. On the other hand, no new deaths were reported here in China in the past day. Meanwhile, in Hubei province and its capital city and center of the outbreak here in China, Wuhan, we should recall that no new cases were registered and 3 patients were discharged from hospital in the province. China continues to help all those nations that need it amid this pandemic, and today, according to official sources, a flight with medical supplies arrived in Jordan, carrying aid that is also destined for Palestine to help them face this pandemic. China has also donated a batch of medical equipment to the Secretariat of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, which is based in Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, and also another batch of Chinese medical supplies were sent to the United Kingdom, mainly to support the hospitals affiliated to the University of Cambridge. This is all the information we have for now, but we will of course keep you posted on all the details.
And we're taking one last break now, but stay with us for more. Welcome back to From the South. The number of confirmed COVID-19 cases in the African continent has reached 24,400 as countries continue to adopt measures to stop the spread of the virus. More than 6,000 people have recovered from the COVID-19 virus, while almost the same number have died. African countries continue implementing measures to combat the pandemic, with countries like Morocco deploying the army to spearhead the fight against COVID-19. As of Tuesday, Egypt surpassed South Africa as the most affected country in the region, with over 3,400 positive cases and 264 fatalities. South Africa follows with 58 deaths and more than 3,000 confirmed cases, while Morocco and Algeria are among the worst hit nations in the continent. Lebanese protesters returned to the streets on Tuesday as the parliament began a 3-day legislative session held at a Beirut theatre to allow legislators to observe coronavirus social distancing measures. During the 3-day meeting, the Lebanese parliament is expected to discuss and approve dozens of laws, including a controversial draft bill on a general amnesty. The bills also include fighting corruption in the public sector, restoring looted public funds, and allowing the plantation of cannabis for medical use. Lebanon has been facing its worst economic crisis in decades, with unemployment figures soaring and the local currency losing more than half of its value against the dollar. The protests had lost some of their momentum and were completely interrupted with the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic.
And this session has 66 articles on it. None of it is dealing with what is happening in Lebanon. What they care about is a law for amnesty, general amnesty. We want to know amnesty for whom? There's no need for that. Now we need solutions for what the country is going through. We need an economic plan. We need laws for economic reform. This is what the country needs. We are in an emergency, and we need to know what the government and the legislators are doing about this.
At least 25 people have been killed by flooding in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Raging floodwaters continue to flow through the center of the city of Uvira in the eastern South Kivu province as Red Cross volunteers continue the search for bodies and people trapped. Many residents returned to their homes to try to collect basic items from the flooded area before returning to higher ground, despite strict travel restrictions due to the coronavirus epidemic, which is making humanitarian aid moves difficult. According to official health authority figures, 350 cases of COVID-19 have been reported and 25 fatalities.
Fortune fell on us without us having been prepared for it. We did not even think about it. The rain fell abundantly until the houses collapsed alone. We do not know where to go and we do not know what to do.
Iraqi authorities partially scaled back the 24-hour curfew imposed to contain the coronavirus on Tuesday in a move to balance the restrictions with the traditions of the month of Ramadan. The new partial curfew will be implemented from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. as of April 21st and until May 11th. However, a total curfew will remain in place on Fridays and Saturdays, while restrictions on public gatherings and social distancing rules continue. Ramadan, which begins this Thursday, is the 9th month of the Islamic calendar, during which Muslims fast from dawn to dusk. The partial lifting of the 24-hour curfew will give Baghdad residents a window to make their final purchases ahead of the start of the holy month. The Iraqi Health Ministry has confirmed over 1,000 cases of the coronavirus and 82 deaths.
Today we are happy with the bold decision taken by the crisis cell to implement a partial removal of the curfew enforced on the Iraqi people, especially the poor and day laborers who struggled during lockdown. But at the same time, I hope Iraqis will be vigilant and should abide to all protective measures and instructions announced by the Ministry of Health and inspection teams.
English singer-songwriter James Blunt released a new coronavirus-themed video for his single The Greatest and announced that the UK profits from the single will be donated to the National Health Service to support the healthcare workers on the front lines of the battle against COVID-19, whom he stressed had given his father a new life. And we finished this news brief with a clip of the video. Remember, you can get all the latest news on our website as well as on social media. For Telesur English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.
Too much to lose. I get frustrated thinking about the world I brought you to. It's a battle of time that I have with you. We don't decide the how, the when, or if we make it through. I feel that you deserve a chance to know the truth and to be better than the ones who came before you, only to let pride and money weaken them. So be the young, the brave, the powerful, 'cause the world is standing waiting for someone to come and change it. Yeah, be the young, the brave, the powerful, 'cause we need a soul to save us, need someone to be the greatest. So many words veiling the truth. The earth is turning and it's time for us to choose. And people will try to take you down too. But if I was a betting man, I'd put all my money on you. I know that I have nothing left to give to you to make you better than The man I failed to be, the friend and father that I know I should have been. So be the young